I'm going to be covering some CRM best practices today. Just quick background on me, I've worked in CRM support for about a year and a half now, so all the tips and tricks that I've come across being on the front line of tech support are going to be included into some of these slides today. So a lot of times when I'm working with people over the phone, they're wondering what's the best way to approach the CRM. So this is sort of 3 phases of efficient CRM use that I've found to be super useful when sort of conceptualizing how to walk in and understand your CRM. So customization, this is just going to be customizing your CRM for data entry and usage. Maintenance, this is just going to be organizing and updating the database. These are your day-to-day processes. And then tracking and reporting, this is going to be how you want to summarize your business as you're going through day-to-day sales. So where do you start? Customization is probably the longest, most tedious process when it comes to using CRM. And I've split that up into 2 separate phases here. That's going to be defining your sales process and then establishing the metrics that define your business standing throughout that process. What's really useful when you're going into the CRM is that you want to be sure that you're creating a sales process and communicating that across your team. A lot of times what I've seen is there'll be multiple users that are going in and out of the system, making different customizations, and there's no sort of collaboration on the types of fields you want to be creating when you're going through this process. So it's really important that you're working with all of your CRM users to understand what is our sales process and how do we want to be molding the CRM to our unique business process. So a quick cover of the sales process there. It's basically just going to be a sequence of progressive stages, and the end goal is to create a customer. So that's just your standard sales process graphic there. Again, this is going to be subjective to your business. You just want to be sure that before you dive in and start making all these changes and customizations, that you're working across your teams and collaborating on how we want to be setting this up. So the standard question is, when you're starting off, how do I mold the CRM to fit my sales process? Well, we've got a few tools for that, and that's going to be with our lead conversion mapping and the deal stage customization. So in Zoho CRM, we start with our lead, and the way that it's sort of pre-programmed in the system is you'll have a lead, you'll capture the information, and upon conversion, you create 2 simultaneous records. You're going to be creating an account, which is the company associated with the lead, and then the contact will just be the person's information, first, last name, and then you have the optional record of creating a deal. Generally, I advise for this to be high-level financials that are associated with the potential sale. So lead conversion mapping allows you to push all of the information that you've captured within your lead record into the corresponding converted modules. So if you're capturing lead name, customer contact information, you can map that over into your contact module, and then you also have the option to push over any information into your accounts and the deals as well. So this is really useful for having that initial prospecting information that was collected pushed into the conversion process. And just a quick screenshot here, basically, when you're creating these different fields, you want to be sure that you're using the same field types, because if you're not using the same field types, if you've got a date field and you're trying to map that over to a date time field, that's not going to map over correctly. So just be sure that you're using the appropriate fields as you're going through this lead conversion mapping. Deal stage customization, this is one that I've seen to be sort of a crowd favorite. This will allow you to set the stages relevant to your business and use the terminology so that you can identify where a certain lead or a deal is within your sales pipeline. So the screenshot here is going to show you, it's called a stage probability mapping, and this is going to allow you to set up different stages and associate the probabilities. I won't get too in depth on the probabilities, but essentially what happens here is you have an expected revenue stage, and that's simply going to be the product of the probability percentage times the amount that you initially input into the deal. So sometimes customers seem to want to use this expected revenue field, and other times there are other different formula fields or custom fields that you can use to capture a currency amount on how much this potential prospect may be bringing in. So another common question we get is, what if I sell different products or services? or I've got different departments that are using the records for different sort of day-to-day processes. We have what's called custom page layouts that'll actually allow you to customize each and every record or module so that you can properly put in the custom fields relevant to your business. So if you're a product company, but you also have the services side, you have an option of creating custom page layouts so that you can capture the information relevant to each of those aspects of your business. So there's a quick view of how that looks when you're going into a record. If you've gone into the module customization, you have the option there to toggle in between each of the page layouts that will capture the information you need. So some time-saving tips that I've found when you're going through the customization phase. Again, the customization aspect of CRM use is always the longest. It takes time to think these through and collaborate with your team. So I've come up with some time-saving options here that'll allow you to sort of expedite this rather than having to go in and out of the modules and spend lengthy periods of time doing this. So adding fields to other layouts. This is relevant to the custom page layouts that I mentioned before. If you're creating different layouts for a product versus service, maybe there's a certain financial metric that you want to capture, or a deal date, or a approval date that is relevant to both aspects of your business, you can simultaneously add that to your other layouts as you're going through the page layout customization. Adding fields to other modules, this is going to be the same concept, and it applies back to that lead conversion mapping that I mentioned. When you're going through and you're creating certain fields for your leads, you have the option to simultaneously create those leads for the corresponding modules that are converted into them. So that's something that'll allow you to not have to toggle in between each of your page layouts, going in and out of the modules, and it tends to save a lot of time when you're going through that customization phase. Finally, importing predefined pick list options. Two parts to this. We actually have a predefined pick list. So as you can see in the screenshot here, we've got days of the week, month of the year, US dates. These are predefined options that we give to you if they're relevant to the record in question. We also have the option of importing pick list options from a set within the layout here. You'll go to the manual entry option there, and essentially what that'll do is it'll allow you to enter all the options relevant to the pick list that you're building. So those are some customization, time-saving tips that I seem to come across. It may seem a bit high level or a bit, beginner level, but just from my experience alone, I've seen that these are things that people don't seem to know about. So now I guess what we'll do is we'll move on to the managing and organizing aspect. We've basically gone through the customization part. We've set it up. We're ready to start putting information into the system. How can I organize this efficiently to view the data that I need? So that's our first business case there. How can I organize my system to view pieces of data that are important to me more efficiently? So some of the features we have going for that is the list view options. At this point, most of you are probably aware of how to set up list views, setting criterias. What a lot of people don't know is you can actually modify the columns within that tabular view. So if there are certain fields that stand out when you're working with your leads, when you're working with your deals, you can actually pick and choose and organize how you want those columns to look in your tabular view. A lot of people don't seem to know about this, so I figured this would be an important aspect to touch on. Next is going to be the business card view. So a lot of people don't seem to know or recognize that at the top of every single module, you have 5 fields that stand out above the rest, and this is what the business card view is going to cover. If there are certain fields that stand out to you and you want to be able to go into a record and easily identify these, the business card view will allow you to do that. Just keep in mind, it'll only allow you 5 fields, but you put these at the top and you can reorganize them as you wish. So related lists, these are essentially going to be modules synced to a specific module within the CRM. So if you have a lead or if you have a deal, you want to see the sales orders or the invoices or the contacts associated with them, you have the option to organize those related lists, and these related lists will show up at the bottom of the record. Another nice aspect to this is that you'll actually have the option to modify the columns within that related list. So if you're working a lead and there are certain aspects of that activity, if that's a related list we're using, then you can actually modify those columns there to see them as efficiently as possible. So another business case scenario that I seem to run into is, how do I mass update my records? a common business case scenario is you've got some CRM users in the company, but then you've also got a massive spreadsheet that's being spread out or sent around from department to department. It'll go to accounting, it'll go to HR, and all these columns and fields are being updated through a master Excel spreadsheet. So how can I efficiently update my data if there are not other users within the CRM that are doing this? Or how can I do this without having to go in record by record? So importing new data to create new records and also update existing records is a really simple way to address this specific business case scenario. If you have this master record that is being constantly updated with new fields and new information, you can actually use that existing master template and continue to re-import that into the system. The system will grab that and automatically update the existing records. You'll have to set that up using some sort of unique ID. Usually an email address is useful, but Zoho actually generates a unique record ID for each and every record that is put into the system. So this is a very useful tool if you're working with other teams or departments that aren't necessarily CRM users in your organization. So just a quick look there. You can see update existing leads. That'll allow you to, based on that certain unique ID, check, the system will check based on these fields and then update the corresponding records. And that's just another look there at the mapping. You can pick and choose any of the fields that need updating. You don't have to go in and completely go through the entire mapping all over again. So select all records in this view. This is one that seems to be a game changer for a lot of people. Obviously, by now you guys are aware of the custom views you can create. If you use a custom view and you want to capture records beyond that 100 page limit, you can actually select all records in a view based on that criteria you've set. So on the screenshot here, you can see I've created a custom view. There's only 10 in the page, but you can actually select every single record that fits the criteria with the custom view you're working with. So you can see here on the next screenshot, you have that option in bold to select all records in that view. And this will go up to at least 5,000 records when you're trying to create changes or do certain actions. So you can do things like change the owner, set reminders, or just delete in bulk. So this is an easy way to basically update the data you have in the system in bulk. We also have the mass update, transfer, and delete options. So basically the way that this feature is going to work is you'll use a certain criteria the same way you would set a custom view. And then once you've captured these in the page, as you can see here, you'll have the option to move forward with the action in question. So if you're looking to mass delete, this is an easy way. Let's say I have some leads that are in the state of Texas. We no longer service Texas. You can search based on that criteria, and then you can either update those based on a certain field or just delete them entirely. You can also transfer these to other record owners within the organization. So Zoho Sheet View, this is going to be for the users that tend to enjoy the Excel format of data maintenance. So this is basically Zoho's version of Excel. What happens here is when you transition over into Zoho Sheet View, that's going to be pulled off of the tabular view that you typically tend to see when you go into a module. So if you've modified those columns to include the data that you want to see efficiently or the fields you want to see efficiently, the Zoho Sheet View will basically carry that over into this sort of format here. So this is an easy way to perform mass updates, delete records. You can even add records through this view as well. And again, this is a very simple and easy way to update your information without having to go in record by record. The one thing I will say about Zoho Sheet View is that just be very careful when you're using it, because a lot of time we'll see that users will go in and they will start making changes and they don't realize that any changes done in the Zoho Sheet View are automatically reflected in your database. So that's the one piece of advice I do want to recommend before diving into this piece of functionality here. So another case or question that I seem to get from a support perspective is, what are some tools or features that I can use to classify my records? So there are obviously fields and custom views that we can use to capture different categorizations of a lead or a contact or a deal. But a few of these features I find to be extremely useful when you want to set up and organize your records in a way that's relevant to your business. So Tagging is a feature that I'm a huge advocate for. This is basically going to be a keyword that you can automatically apply to your records without having to go into your page layout customization and recreating a custom field. So this is a quick and easy way to set up basically keywords that you can build reports off of, build automation off of, so on and so forth. So the nice thing about tagging as well is if you're importing your data through some sort of file, you can actually mass tag all of the bulk entries coming in. And that's a best practice that I like to preach when I'm working with customers. This will allow you to sort of keep tabs on these mass imports that you're doing, and you can easily filter on these later down the line. So record ownership, this tends to be a common feature in most CRMs. We've gotten the question a few times from a support perspective, why do I need to have a record owner? Or what if it doesn't matter? That's totally fine. But in Zoho CRM, there always needs to be a record owner, and this basically notifies you of who is responsible for that record. So if you're dealing with a certain deal, and someone's managing that deal, and someone from your sales team is constantly prospecting and following up with them, the record ownership is a very useful tool for building reports and building automation to understand who's working what and who's responsible for which records. So to follow up with this record ownership feature, a lot of times we get the question, well, what if there's more than one record owner or someone responsible for a deal, a lead? A common business case for that is going to be maybe I want a sales executive keeping track of our larger clients that we need to be prospecting and keeping an eye on this deal. So that's where the user lookup field comes in. And basically what this allows you to do is set up a secondary owner or even a third or fourth owner on the record in question. So this will allow you to keep multiple sets of eyes on the deals that matter most. And again, you can go in and build reports related to these user lookup fields. So this is a nice and easy way to sort of understand what are the sets of eyes within my organization that is viewing this specific record. So a lot of times people are working with these large databases, large user organizations are seeing overlap in their system. People tend to wonder, how can I deal with duplicates that exist in my system? So Zoho CRM actually has a feature for that. We've got a deduplicate feature that operates in two methods here. One is going to be deduplicating based on a single record. So if you feel like, hey, I think I've seen this contact before, it looks familiar, you have the option to go in and deduplicate based off that individual record. So this screenshot here is going to show you if you go into that record for James here, you can find and merge duplicates based on a handful of fields here. And those are going to be fields like the first name, last name, obviously, but then unique fields like phone, email. Those are going to allow you to search the entire database using that specific record as reference. The second use of deduplication is going to be the default fields that Zoho CRM allows you to use. So that's going to be things like the email field, the company field, phone field, any sort of unique field that might be relevant to a certain record. You have the option to choose up to 1 up to 4 of these records simultaneously to check for these. So this screenshot here will show you when you're searching by that, we've got an example here where I've got 10 duplicates based on that phone number there. And if we move forward, you'll see you can actually choose up to 3 to pick and choose the fields across those duplicate records. So in this next screenshot here, you'll have the 3 records, and then on a field-by-field basis, you'll be able to pick and choose what should exist in the master record. Once you set this up and you've hit merge, the other 2 records will be disposed of. So your team is going in, they're making these changes, they're updating your database, and from a high-level perspective, as an admin or a manager, an executive, you're wondering, well, how do I know what's going on in the system? There's day-to-day actions that are going on, and I need to be up to date on who's doing what. Well, we've got some features for that as well, and that's going to start with our record timeline. This is going to be on an individual record basis. If you go into a record, up at the top left, you'll see that you'll have actually a history of all the activities done on the record up to the last 6 months. So here you'll see who's done what, when it was done, and it'll give you sort of a comprehensive view at the individual record and what's going on. If you have any sort of automation set up, future actions coming into this particular record, you have the upcoming actions as well, so that if there's any sort of workflow email that's sending out, you're able to go in and maybe stop that or change the template that's going out to this specific record. So the audit log is something that I've seen not many people seem to know about. And basically, this is going to be your overview look at what's going on in my system, who's doing what. And it's not just a massive log with everything that's happening. You also have the option to drill down on certain components as well. So if there's a certain module you want to take a look at, a certain user to see what sort of actions they're performing in the database, you have that option as well. And you can even drill down on the sort of actions that are being done. So updating, deleting, or adding records are all you're able to capture through this audit log as well. So recycle bin, a lot of times, things get lost in translation. Your sales rep might have accidentally deleted a very important record. You can actually go back in and recover that through the recycle bin option. And just like the audit log, you'll have 60 days to go back in and restore that. But these are basically going to be deleted records from your system that you want to go back in and recover. So audit log and recycle bin are super useful for sort of tracking and maintaining what's going on within the system itself. So quick look at the recycle bin there. Again, you can see that there are different options on where you want to filter. You can go by the module, you can see by who deleted it, and also the time frame as well. So finally, scheduled data backups. One common question that I get from the support side is, what if I want to be capturing snapshots or instances of my database from the past? Scheduled data backups is going to be the tool you're going to want to look for here. Basically what this does is on the paid edition of CRMs, you're entitled to 2 backups per month, and it'll take an entire snapshot of your database and send that to the super admin of the organization. This will be a massive zip file that you'll have up to 7 days to access, and it'll include all modules, all related lists, and basically take an entire screenshot or snapshot of your system based off when this backup was initiated. So oftentimes, this is a useful tool where if your team has kind of made a lot of changes and the system or the data maybe got a little messy, then you can actually use this backup to re-import that data into the system and take that snapshot from a previous instance to your present instance. This is also a useful way of sort of cross-referencing your zip file backup with the existing present database so that you can see maybe there's a record that I want to cross-reference with the master template with my current database to see where that might have been lost. So there's a quick look at the data backup there. You're given a log of who's done what, who initiated the backup, and then also the scheduling is an option up there at the top as well. So this, as a best practice, is something that I would recommend to everyone. Go ahead and get into the system, schedule this, do it twice a month. Obviously, you don't have to, but this is a very useful tool if your data maybe falls off the path or you're worrying about what your sales team is doing. Again, and this goes back to collaborating across with your team, making sure that everyone is constantly communicating on what's going on in the system. But if that gets out of hand, the data backup is there as a safety net. So that sort of covers some maintenance features, tools, tips that'll allow you to organize your data, take a snapshot of your data, and basically organize everything so that you can quickly go into the system and see what needs to be seen. Next, we'll go into the final phase, which will be the tracking and reporting. And this is basically going to allow us to summarize the data and the metrics that will basically describe your business's standing. So one point I like to make in terms of best practices is when you're starting off with the customization phase, you always want to be thinking, what are some of my end goals when I'm going to be using this CRM? What are the metrics that define my business? These sort of questions will allow you to set up custom fields, page layouts, all the customization features we went through, and it'll allow you to basically set up your system so that you know at the end of the day, when I want to know where my company is at, where my business standing is, then I can set that up through the tracking and reporting. So that's what we're saying here. Defining your reporting standards early on, it's going to allow you to work backwards and set up your configuration process early on. So what kind of metrics might be an example of what I want to capture for my organization? So things like, how many calls did my sales team make today? Which leads were added to the CRM this week? How much revenue did my company make this quarter? And then you can even drill down even further onto things like, which deals were sent an official proposal in the month of April of 2017. The reporting in the CRM is extremely flexible if you've put the fields in the system to properly capture that. So if there's any major sort of takeaway from a best practices presentation that I would like to emphasize, it would be think about your reporting standards early on. Even if you're not just getting started, think about how you want to be summarizing your business, because this is going to allow you to conceptualize what sort of fields do I want to be capturing in each of the records that I'm working with. So custom reports, we'll actually have an in-depth reporting session later today that will go into how to set this up, how to use the custom fields that we've created to drill down on the metrics that matter most. But reports are going to be a quick and easy way to basically get that snapshot of some of the metrics that we previously stated. There's a quick view of some of the reports we offer there. We've got things like pipeline by stage, leads by status. And Zoho CRM offers you at least 40 standard reports when you come in. So that's a great place to start and kind of look at what are some examples of reports if you're not too sure what you want to be reporting on. The standard reports are going to be a great place to start. If you're beyond that and you're ready to start drilling down on the things that matter most to your business, you're ready to go in and start creating custom reports using standard filters, advanced filters, and we've got summary and matrix reports that, again, we'll get more in depth on later in the day. So custom dashboards, these are basically going to be visualizations of the reports you create. So a lot of you are probably visual learners. You want to be looking at charts, graphs, quick and easy visualizations when you're working with a presentation or executives, things like that. The dashboards are going to allow you to basically build visualizations off of the reports you've previously created. So there's a quick look at some of the dashboards we offer there. We've got a circle chart there that'll show you leads by source. We've got standard stats and metrics such as leads by month. These are the kind of things that the dashboards will allow you to do. Now, the final thing that I want to touch on is going to be the homepage customization. This is going to be a super useful tool for customizing the data that matters most to the user or the profile that's logged in. So, for example, if you're a sales executive, you want to be looking at big picture things. What are the amounts by stage in this month? That's an example of a homepage dashboard that you can set up. As a sales rep, something you may want to be looking for is, what are my calls for the day? What are my tasks for the day? Maybe what are some of my overdue activities that I need to touch on as soon as I log in the morning? The homepage customization is going to allow you to customize that based on who's logged in. And I left a little space there at the bottom so you can see how you can resize it based on the data that is most important to you. Thanks again for your time.